Some sequels play it safe, others aim higher. And then there are the rare few that don't just match the original, they redefine what a sequel can be. Today we're spotlighting the most iconic movie sequels that didn't just continue the story, they stole the show. These aren't just good sequels. These are genre-defining, expectation-shattering cinematic follow-ups that left the originals in their shadow. Peter Jackson's trilogy was already a towering achievement by the time its final chapter arrived. But The Return of the King didn't simply conclude the saga, it crowned it with thunder. This wasn't just a finale. It was a culmination of years of vision, obsession, and craftsmanship. Jackson directed with a commanding confidence, letting grandeur and intimacy dance in perfect balance. The first Lethal Weapon was a funny, gritty, emotionally charged buddy cop thriller. Part 2 cranked the charm, polished the tone, and struck gold. What could have been a retread turned into a tonal balancing act, where violence, heart, and humor coexisted without clashing. Mel Gibson's Martin Riggs and Danny Glover's Murtaugh evolved from volatile partners to an electric duo. Throw in Joe Pesci as the manic wild card and a fresh sense of rhythm, and the sequel carved out a voice on its own.
I can't see him. How close am I?
Making a sequel decades later is a gamble. Making one that transcends the original, that's aviation alchemy. Top Gun was flash and attitude. Maverick is reflection, legacy, and speed you feel in your chest. Joseph Kosinski takes Tony Scott's sun-soaked bravado and injects it with pathos and purpose. Tom Cruise, still magnetic, returns as a man haunted by time and loss, fighting irrelevance in a world that's outpaced him. Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man was a cultural tidal wave, bold, bright, and unapologetically earnest. But Spider-Man 2 is where the heart kicks in. The sequel doesn't just expand, it deepens. Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker's powers flicker as doubt creeps in. Raimi leans into that vulnerability, stripping the hero down to his core and giving the film a pulse of real-world anxiety. First Avenger was earnest, nostalgic, and traditional, a heartfelt introduction to a man out of time. But The Winter Soldier shattered the patriotic mold and rebuilt Steve Rogers as a disillusioned warrior navigating a world poisoned by paranoia. Directors Anthony and Joe Russo infused the sequel with political urgency, espionage paranoia, and brutal grounded combat. Chris Evans' performance deepened, anchoring Cap not just as a leader, but as a man grappling with relevance in a morally gray world.
Never start with the head. The victim gets all fuzzy. He can't feel the next.
Batman Begins laid the groundwork. The Dark Knight obliterated expectations. Christopher Nolan's middle entry in the trilogy wasn't just a sequel, it was a genre-shattering epic. What elevates The Dark Knight isn't just its scale or intensity, it's the sophistication. Heath Ledger's Joker isn't a villain you defeat, he's a force you endure, a symbol of chaos. Ledger's performance, raw, unpredictable, terrifying, became instantly iconic.
Eat floor. High fiber.
Hey, stud.
Tim Burton's Batman shook the superhero genre to its core. But for all its style, it still followed a familiar path. Batman Returns tore up the blueprint. This time, the director leaned fully into his gothic instincts, flooding Gotham with snow, shadows, and moral ambiguity. Michael Keaton's Batman became even more internal, a haunted figure who spoke less and observed more. But the real evolution came from the villains, damaged, theatrical, and dripping with duality. This wasn't just a sequel, it was Burton's personal nightmare in spandex. After the cerebral yet sluggish Star Trek the Motion Picture, audiences weren't asking for philosophical musings. They wanted fire in the warp core. And the Wrath of Khan delivered it with precision and fury. Nicholas Meyer brought a naval swagger to the franchise, infusing it with discipline and urgency. He resurrected a long-forgotten villain and turned him into one of the great cinematic adversaries, Ricardo Montalban's Khan, equal parts Shakespeare and Steel. Ridley Scott's Alien was a masterclass in horror, claustrophobic, primal, restrained. James Cameron didn't try to replicate it. Alien shifts genre entirely. It swaps slow dread for relentless tension, replacing the haunted terror of the original with adrenaline, firepower, and overwhelming odds. And at its core, Sigourney Weaver's Ellen Ripley evolves from survivor to soldier to surrogate mother, all without losing an ounce of vulnerability or grit.
I promise you, nobody.
The first Mad Max hinted at a world unraveling, scarred highways, fading order, vengeance with a badge. But the Road Warrior obliterated subtlety and drove full throttle into post-apocalyptic chaos. Where the original was a grim revenge thriller with flashes of dystopia, the sequel became a savage operatic spectacle. George Miller transformed Max from a man into a myth, a hardened loner caught between survival and sacrifice, silence and savagery. With minimal dialogue and maximum impact, Mel Gibson's Mad Max became a wandering legend, a ghost with a V8 engine.
She's gone.
No! You don't say that!
We gotta go back. She's gone.
No!
X-Men cracked open the door. X2 blew it off the hinges. Bryan Singer's sequel abandoned the first story's framework. The result? A tighter, deeper, and more confident entry that juggled a sprawling cast without losing its emotional core. Where the first film introduced mutants, X2 was bigger, braver, and narratively richer. It marked a turning point for superhero cinema.
General?
Richard Donner's Superman gave audiences the first real cinematic superhero spectacle. But it was Superman 2 that dared to let the Man of Steel bleed. After behind-the-scenes clashes led to director Richard Lester taking over midstream, the sequel might have collapsed under creative whiplash. Instead, it delivered a sharper, more personal story, one that asked what it means to be super in a world that demands humanity. The original Terminator was lean, relentless, and gritty, a sci-fi slasher with a pulse. But Judgment Day wasn't content with repeating that formula. James Cameron returned with a bigger vision, a bolder budget, and a story that expanded in every direction without sacrificing its intensity. Arnold Schwarzenegger's remorseless killer becomes a guardian. The stakes evolve from survival to salvation, and the introduction of the T-1000, a liquid metal nightmare, set a new bar for visual effects. It's rare for a sequel to expand a story's world without diluting its power. The Godfather Part 2 did something even bolder. It mirrored its predecessor while deepening its mythology and doubling down on its moral decay. Francis Ford Coppola didn't just continue the saga, he split it in two. In one half, Michael Corleone's soul erodes as he becomes colder, more ruthless, and increasingly isolated. In the other, we witness the rise of young Vito Corleone, played with quiet brilliance by Robert De Niro, charting how nobility and necessity gave way to power and fear. When Star Wars hit theaters in 1977, it wasn't just a success, it was a phenomenon. The Empire Strikes Back took the fairy tale optimism of the original and hurled it into a darker, more mature galaxy. Director Irvin Kershner gave the franchise teeth, injecting gravitas, heartbreak, and strategic character development. Han and Leia's romance deepened. Luke's path grew more treacherous, and Darth Vader became more than a villain. He became a mythic force. Great sequels aren't just continuations, they're transformations. They challenge the boundaries of what came before, elevate the narrative, and sometimes, just sometimes, become the reason the original is remembered at all. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content.